I'm Kate Harris, so nice to meet you all. I work here at the Office for Product Safety and Standards in the local delivery team, like many of the people who are presenting this week. And I've just got a bit of housekeeping script to read out before we start. So if you're not speaking, please make sure your camera's off and your microphone is muted to avoid background noise during the session. We are going to be recording the session to share with all delegates afterwards. So we expect that many people will be watching this as a recorded session rather than being here live. So please do keep this in mind when you're posting in the chat. If for any reason your internet or laptop fails, note down the dial-in number so that you can call back in. They can be found on the meeting details above, and my colleague Daniel's going to post those in the chat now. Please do use the chat function during the session for any thoughts, comments or questions, and we will respond to these at the end of the session if there is time, and I will do my best to pick up questions as we go through as well. You can always also raise your hand at any point if you want to ask a question or make a comment. So that is the housekeeping. Hopefully Daniel's just posted it in the chat. Yeah, I was going to just try and get a feel, actually, first of all, for where everybody is from. So rather than go around and ask you all, hopefully Daniel can just post a poll for us, just to get an idea of kind of the mix of local authority, businesses, and also kind of backgrounds as well, like environmental health or trading standards or licensing. So I think that should just be coming through on your screen now. I'm gonna answer it for myself. If you just take a second to answer that poll, that would be great. Thank you. Okay. So we've got trading standards, other other local authority teams, other government departments, business as well. Okay, thank you. I will close mine, but those of you who are here can continue to fill that poll in if you haven't already. So you're here today for the refresher on primary authority. We do have several primary authority training courses that we run free of charge, all via MS Teams at the moment, which go into a bit more detail than we're going to have time to cover today. So the idea of today's session is really just to go over the basics of primary authority for anybody that's completely new to it, or people who've perhaps been away from the scheme for a little bit of time and they just want a bit of an update to make sure that their knowledge is still up to date. So I'm going to talk to you first of all about basically what primary authority is. So Stuart, if I can go to next slide. Thank you. So primary authority is all about building simpler, fairer and more successful local regulation based on these relationships between local authorities or fire and rescue services and businesses. So it's all about developing relationships. But primary authority is a scheme that defines a legally recognised relationship or legally recognised partnership between a business or a coordinator of a group of businesses and a single local authority or a single fire and rescue service, which then becomes that business's or that coordinator for a group of businesses. It becomes their primary authority. And the scheme has a statutory basis. So the piece of legislation, if you wanted to look it up, is the Regulatory Enforcement and Sanctions Act 2008, which we often refer to as RESA. And RESA has been amended several times since 2008 as the scheme has been developed. So RESA was introduced in 2008, and the first primary authority partnerships were nominated in 2009. And the first partnerships were all about a business that had multiple sites, so a business that traded across local authority boundaries, forming a relationship with a single local authority so that they could go and get their regulatory advice from them. So the first partnerships tended to be the big food retailers, the likes of Asda, Sainsbury's, Tesco. These are all businesses that trade across local authority boundaries, and they formed a relationship with a single local authority. But it was recognised that whilst it was great for those businesses, some smaller businesses were missing out on primary authority. And in 2013, this concept of coordinated partnerships was introduced. And I'm going to cover in a little bit more detail what a coordinated partnership is later. The scheme was reviewed again, and in 2014, the scope of primary authority was expanded to include more regulatory functions, including fire safety. It was reviewed again in 2016 and relaunched. So there was a bit of reinvention around the scheme. So coordinators of groups of businesses were given more responsibility, supporting regulators were introduced. And the approach to when a business went and sought a primary authority partner was also changed. So prior to 2017, a business like a big food retailer could say, well, for food hygiene, I would like to go to this authority to be my primary authority. For health and safety, I'd like to go to another authority to be my primary authority. And for another aspect of regulation, maybe weights and measures, I'm going to choose to go with another authority. And that was becoming quite confusing for enforcing authorities, knowing which primary authority they needed to contact. So in 2017, the approach to the scheme was changed, which meant that a business, when choosing their primary authority, would go to that authority for all of the regulatory functions that that authority delivered. So, for example, if you were a retailer and you went to one of the London boroughs, they have environmental health teams, they have trading standards teams, they have licensing teams. So that authority would become the primary authority for all of those regulatory areas. The most recent change to primary authority, certainly in England, was actually in the end of December 2021. So this year, we now have Part 2A of the Public Health Act within scope of primary authority in England. And that means that any of the coronavirus regulations that are currently in force in England now fall within scope of primary authority. So until the end of December, they didn't. We have over 100,000 businesses in primary authority partnerships now, and close to 200 local authorities and fire and rescue services actively offering primary authority and delivering partnerships. So we are the Office for Product Safety and Standards, and our role in primary authority is to host a secure primary authority register, which lists all of the partnerships that exist and enables primary authorities to securely share information on their business partner with other local authorities around the country. We're responsible for effective delivery and supporting the growth of the primary authority scheme. And we also manage the nomination of partnerships. We have some consent processes. So when a local authority is looking at working in a certain way or developing certain products with their business partner, we have a consent process that we look after. And we also have a necessary safeguard built into primary authority. In the event that there's a dispute between a primary authority and another local authority, we have a determination process. So in supporting the scheme, we have a number of different products, groups and networks that we facilitate. So I'm going to start with the primary authority sector panels. So many of these formed during the pandemic, and in these sector panels, we bring together primary authorities working with particular business types together so that they can support one another, they can benchmark, they can share best practice. So for example, there's a sector panel concerned with hospitality businesses, there's a sector panel concerned with retail food businesses, there's a sector panel concerned with manufacturing and warehousing as well. So this is about bringing those primary authorities together so that they can benchmark and support one another. We have primary authority news, which you can sign up to. There's an email address on the scheme there. That includes kind of topical updates, good news stories, again, sharing of best practice. So by all means, please do sign up to Primary Authority News if you haven't already. I've mentioned that we have a number of training products. Again, if you need more information about training, we can provide that. And in terms of an update on training, we're just about to develop and launch some training products for businesses who are interested or involved in primary authority. And then on our website, we have a number of resources and templates, all intended to support delivery of the scheme. But the first point on that list was the primary authority regional groups. So we have 7 primary authority regional groups for all areas of the country. And on the next slide now, Stuart's just going to play a very short video from one of the attendees of a primary authority regional group, just talking about the benefits of joining one of these groups. So thank you, Stuart.
Hello, I'm Helen Mansfield from Gloucestershire Trade and Standards. In Gloucestershire, we're part of the South West Regional Primary Authority Group. It's not been set up very long, but I must admit it has been really beneficial for us. We like the fact that we're in an officer environment, so everybody's facing the same problems, whether that's learning as a regulator how to approach businesses in this new way of working, and what is best practice, what works for other groups. The Southwest obviously is a very rural area, and Gloucestershire is a very rural area, so it's nice to talk to other officers that are experiencing the same problems, and not necessarily problems but just the same hurdles as we are, and how they've overcome it, how we've overcome it. So it's a very good format and platform for sharing information, and from that it's given us some consistency and some support. Early conversations have been around cost recovery, and that's been really beneficial for us, because charging for our services is a whole new ball game that we're having to learn very quickly. And it's nice to see that about different approaches to introducing the scheme to businesses. And from that, I think as officers in Gloucestershire, we've got more confidence to explore new opportunities, which during the COVID crisis has now led us to sign up a company in the last week. And I don't know that we would have had that confidence prior to learning what other areas in the region are doing.
Thanks, Stuart. We couldn't actually see the video, but we could hear Helen, which I suppose is the most important thing. So thanks. I'm not sure what quite went wrong there. Just to say, the primary authority regional groups are for anybody. They're for primary authorities or people working in enforcing authorities as well. So you don't need to be actively working on a primary authority partnership to attend. And then there is also a business primary authority group, which our colleague Neil Boyle looks after. So if you're a business here today, you may well already be on that group, but if you're not, please do get in touch and we can share the details of that business primary authority group as well. Thanks, Stuart. So it's our team, it's the local delivery team at OPSS that support the primary authority scheme, but that's not all we do. We're also responsible for the Better Business for All programmes, and a lot of our work is concerned with helping local authorities and businesses form partnerships and trying to facilitate collaborative working as well. So we facilitate conversations between local regulators, between local authorities and government, between local authorities and businesses. So we're all about promoting partnership working, simplifying regulation, and making sure that it's delivered in the most effective and efficient way possible. So the other responsibility that our team have is for the regulators code. And if that's something that you're not familiar with, do a quick Google and the regulators code should come up in the list of documents. Certainly worth having a read of if you haven't for a while or you're not familiar with that. Thanks, Stuart. So the regional leads that we have in our team are on the slide now, and you will have copies of all of these slides, so you don't need to write them down. You can contact a regional lead, and as I said, Neil Boyle also supports the Primary Authority Business Group as well. So if you're from a business, please do get in touch with Neil if you'd like to attend that. So the scope of Primary Authority. Next slide, please. The regulatory scope is defined under that Regulatory Enforcement and Sanctions Act. And basically, most trading standards, fire safety and environmental health legislation is included within the scope of primary authority. We have a document that's our statutory guidance document, and again you'll have a link to it in the slide pack. But the statutory guidance goes through in a bit more detail what legislation is within scope of primary authority. When a local authority becomes a primary authority for a business or a group of businesses, it becomes the primary authority for all of the regulatory functions that that local authority or that fire and rescue service delivers. So, for example, if that authority has both environmental health and trading standards team, that authority becomes the primary authority for all of those regulatory functions. But primary authority does apply differently across the 4 nations of the UK. So in Scotland and Northern Ireland, there is more limited scope to PA. So it only applies to relevant functions which are reserved and enforced by local authorities or fire and rescue services. Next slide, please. In Wales, only a local authority can be nominated to be primary authority with respect to devolved matters. So devolved Welsh matters include agriculture, food, environmental protection, pollution control, housing and public health. So only a Welsh local authority can offer primary authority services to a business or a coordinator of a group of businesses if they want coverage in Wales. And next slide, Stuart, please. Similarly, in England, if a matter is a devolved matter, only a local authority in England can offer primary authority services for English only matters. And what that effectively means in practice is that if you are a business that trades across England and Wales and you would like primary authority coverage in both nations on a matter that is devolved, for example, food safety, you would need to sign up with both an English local authority to cover your England sites and a Welsh primary authority to cover your Welsh sites. Thanks, Stuart. Next slide, please. So what does primary authority actually deliver? What are the benefits? So to business can go to their primary authority to get reliable regulatory advice, and they will have a single point of contact to get that reliable regulatory advice. So if a business, for example, is a multi-site business and is getting inspected perhaps by lots of different authorities around the country, they will be able to go to a single local authority, their primary authority, to confirm whether what they're doing or proposing to do is compliant with the law. Enforcing authorities are the authorities. Oh, sorry, Stuart. Just go back to. So enforcing authorities are the authorities, if you can go back 2 slides, Stuart, if possible, please. And again, thank you. Brill. So enforcing authorities are the authorities that are not the primary authority, but still will be regulating a business at a local level. So the idea is that the enforcing authorities, because they're able to access information from the primary authority, and that might be through having a conversation or accessing information that the primary authority has posted on the PA register, they're then better informed about that business. They can more effectively regulate them, and actually they can improve targeting of their resources more effectively as well. So if the primary authority has, reviewed aspects of the business and identified some areas of greater risk, they're able to tell enforcing authorities what they are, so that when enforcing authorities engage and interact with that business, they know where their time is best spent. The whole scheme is intended to facilitate information and intelligence sharing, and in doing so, improve and drive up compliance levels in business, therefore, of course, offering better public protection as well. Thanks, Stuart. So the role of a primary authority is to lead or coordinate the regulation of businesses so that it's both efficient and effective, so that the compliance is driven higher. They act as a key point of contact and source of information for a business. They build up a really detailed understanding of that business and its approach to compliance, and they can communicate that to other local authorities. They effectively lead the regulation of the business on behalf of their local authority colleagues by guiding them in terms of what checks are needed, supporting consistent interpretation, and helping them make informed and proportionate responses to non-compliance. And of course, they may as well liaise with any national regulator or government department that also has a role in terms of regulating that business, or a role in legislating in terms of that business. But who can offer primary authority? So the only people that can offer primary authority are local authorities. So county, unitary, district councils can all offer primary authority for the regulatory functions that they're responsible for. Fire and rescue services can offer primary authority, port health authorities can, but of course we've all got to be mindful of devolved legislation. So as I said, if you're an England local authority, when you're considering your offer in terms of the businesses you're going to work with, you need to be aware of devolved matters, and it may be the case that you need to advise the business that they'll also need a Welsh primary authority if they need coverage across those two nations. The Secretary of State will consider and confirm the suitability of a local authority who is proposing to be a primary authority. So there are two types of primary authority partnership. There are direct partnerships between a business and a local authority or a fire and rescue service, and they're probably the most simple partnerships to understand. Or there are coordinated partnerships, and these are partnerships between a coordinator of a group of businesses and a local authority or fire and rescue service. So then if you are a coordinator, any of the businesses that are participating in your, perhaps in your trade association, or they form part of a regulated group. So they are then captured within the primary authority partnership as well. So in terms of eligibility, who can form a primary authority partnership? It's any business that is regulated or expects to be regulated by a local authority or a fire and rescue service. And whereas in the early days of the scheme, you needed to be regulated by more than one local authority, that isn't the case anymore. So you can be a single site business that is just regulated by one local authority, and you can still form a primary authority partnership if you wish to. You don't even have to have started your business yet. You could be a startup business. that isn't even trading yet. And the idea of this is that it's most important that businesses get the right advice from the very start, before they even begin to trade, to make sure that they're doing the right things and people are protected from the very start, which is why pre-started businesses are also eligible to enter into partnerships. You're only allowed to have one direct primary authority partnership per relevant function. So, for example, if you have an environmental health partnership with a particular local authority, you are only allowed to have one of those. You can't have multiple primary authority partnerships for the same area of regulation. And once the partnership is nominated, the business will appear on the primary authority register. So coordinated partnerships are slightly different. So a coordinator is a single entity nominated by the Secretary of State to coordinate the relationship between a regulated group of businesses and a local authority, which becomes the primary authority. So you might be thinking, oh, well, what does that look like in practice? So the types of coordinators that we have in primary authority are organisations like trade associations, franchisors, company groups, and we also have some consultants as well. So trade associations are probably the easiest to understand. So you've got one body representing many different businesses who are all independent of each other, but they all go to that trade association for their compliance advice. And that trade association is able to enter into a primary authority partnership with a single local authority to ask questions, to get assurance that they're doing the right thing. And then the trade association can share that information with all of those members, so that they all benefit from the expertise and advice of the primary authority. To be eligible to enter into a coordinated partnership, there has to be an ongoing relationship between the coordinator and the businesses. Their suitability will be assessed by us at OPSS. They must maintain an up-to-date and accurate membership list of all of the businesses that are going to be captured by the coordinated partnership. And they must show that they're able to communicate with that group of businesses, that regulated group, so that they know what the primary authority is telling them. Thanks, Stuart. So you can drop the slide down, Stuart, on this one. So this diagram is simply showing you that here we've got 4 independent businesses. They don't necessarily know each other. They might be in the four kind of corners of England or Wales, but they all happen to be a member of perhaps a trade association. That trade association becomes the coordinator. They form a primary authority partnership with a local authority. They ask questions, they get information and advice, and then that coordinator takes responsibility for disseminating it to those 4 individual businesses. So thanks, Stuart. So businesses can only form one direct primary authority partnership, but they could, in theory, be a member of several different trade associations, or maybe be a member of a trade association and also use the services of a consultancy. So they might be captured within a couple of coordinated partnerships. And really, the partnerships that a business had will simply depend on their needs. So they could all be very different. Again, I'll refer you to the Primary Authority Statutory Guidance, which has a figure 2, which explains this in a little bit more detail than we have time for today. Thank you. Next slide, Stuart, please. So when you are working as a primary authority, there are a number of statutory tools available to you, and I'm just going to run through these very briefly now. So next slide. So the first one is primary authority advice. So a business or a coordinator could approach the primary authority to seek primary authority advice, which asks how the law applies to their business or their group of businesses. Or the question could be whether the primary authority can assess the suitability of the business's control systems. So that might be in a food business, for example, a food safety management system. But primary authorities can also issue advice to other local authorities. So, for example, if the primary authority conducts an investigation into a particular issue at a business and they get the answer, they can then make that answer available to all other local authorities or fire and rescue services so that those same authorities don't need to do the same investigation again. So it might be, for example, a piece of machinery or equipment that there's some concerns about. The primary authority investigates it, seeks whatever expertise they need to, and then when they've completed that investigation, they publish that on the register to other local authorities so that they don't need to look into that issue in as much detail or even investigate it at all. And that's a very powerful tool, basically saying, I've investigated, so you don't need to. So if a local authority wants to do that, they need the consent of the Secretary of State. And we at OPSS will consider that, and we administer that consent on behalf of the Secretary of State. So primary authority advice is most often issued to the business. So that issuing to other local authorities is very, very rarely used. Most advice is issued directly to the business or to the coordinator. And it's often referred to as assured advice because once issued, the business has some assurance that they're doing the right thing. And primary authority advice is particularly powerful because a primary authority can direct an enforcing authority not to take enforcement action if it's inconsistent with primary authority advice that has been given to that business or to that coordinator. So you might be sitting here thinking, oh gosh, that sounds like a big responsibility. And also, what happens if an enforcing authority who's regulating that business at a local level disagrees with what the primary authority has said is okay? So, of course, the scheme has some statutory safeguards built into it. And the determination process is one of these statutory safeguards. So if an enforcing authority disagrees with the primary authority in that they should be able to take enforcement action and the primary authority has blocked it, they can bring the matter to determination and the Secretary of State will consider the matter and make a decision either way as to whether the enforcement action should go ahead or whether the primary authority was right to say that it shouldn't. So we've got this safeguard built into the scheme. You'll be pleased to know that in the, how many years now, kind of 12 years that the scheme's been around, and this determination process has been used 10 times. And when you get the slide pack, you will see a link there to a summary of all of the determinations that have taken place so far. So you'll be able to have a read of them if you're interested. Okay, next slide, Stuart, please. So inspection plans are another statutory tool that is available to primary authorities. So an inspection plan is something that the primary authority can develop to provide guidance to other local authorities as to what checks to do at a local level in their partner's business. An inspection plan aims to improve targeting and focus at a local level, and usually the primary authority will ask officers to provide feedback back to the primary authority. And that enables them to build up a detailed picture of what that business is doing at a local level around the country. If there's an inspection plan in place, it is a requirement for a local authority to follow it. So it's not optional. If a primary authority has published an inspection plan on the primary authority register, then as a local authority, you must use and follow it when you're carrying out any proactive work or any proactive check on compliance in the business. And if the inspection plan asks for feedback, again, there's a statutory duty to provide that feedback back to the primary authority. An enforcing authority can request agreement from the primary authority to do something different if they look at the inspection plan and they don't think it's relevant. And a business could be covered by more than one inspection plan. So, for example, if it's a business in a direct partnership and also a member of a trade association, and they've both published inspection plans, the statutory guidance tells you what to do. And basically, you go with the direct partnership first. So you follow that inspection plan. It kind of takes precedent over the coordinated inspection plan because it's more tailored for the business. Next slide, Stuart, please. So the primary authority register, if you are here from a local authority, and I think many of you are, next slide, please, Stuart. Thank you. You should have a secure login to access the primary authority register. It's an internet resource maintained by us at the Office for Product Safety and Standards, and it lists all of the primary authority partnerships. The secure part of the register aids communication and information sharing between a primary authority and other enforcing authorities. And also, this is where you go if you need to notify the primary authority of enforcement action being proposed. If you're a business in primary authority, you will also have access to the primary authority register, but you'll only be able to access the page that is relevant to your partnership. You won't be able to kind of go looking at what other businesses have got on their pages. Only local authority regulators are able to do that. Thanks, Stuart. So this slide is just a few of the businesses that we've got in primary authority. So I said over 100,000 businesses are part of the scheme. So some well-known names there on the screen that many of you will be familiar with. And FairShare, who we've got there, were one of our award winners last year in our primary authority awards for the work that they've been doing with their partner Greenwich, the Royal Borough. Is it Royal Borough of Greenwich? Yeah, Royal Borough of Greenwich in London. So thanks, Stuart. Next slide. And we'll see, we've got another video. It's a short video from a business talking about their primary authority partnership. It's not one of those kind of big names on the screen, but let's see if we can get this video to work with the...
if you can see it, Kate.
No. We can hear.
Let me try something else. Hold on.
Thanks, Stuart.
Oh, wait a minute.
Yes.
Bear with me.
Okay, thank you.
So my name's Andrew Polita. I'm the Group Exec Chef here at KBK, KBK Meal Prep. So when I first joined KBK, we didn't have 5 stars. It's something that I wanted to achieve within my first 6 months. Unfortunately, COVID hit not long after, so that was put on the back burner. But we put a plan in motion to do certain things in certain time scales, and having that open dialects with especially environmental health helped us achieve that. It would have been a lot more expensive for us to go down the consultancy route, so doing it internally and having the backing and support of Salford City Council in particular has helped us grow and get to where we are as a business today. So over probably the next 12 months now, we want to improve our offering in our store, which is in Manchester, using a partnership under Salford. We are part of the Centre of Excellence, so we can utilise other streams of primary authority from Manchester, Oldham, and we see that being a real benefit in our store. One thing that obviously we've really been impressed with about the partnership is the assured advice. What assured advice means is someone has a look at the information that you're portraying or the information you're writing down in terms of compliance and just evaluating it. It can be quite costly getting an external company or consultant to do that. And one thing with the primary authority is, whether it's from a trade standards point of view, they'll evaluate your wording and your language to make sure it's compliant and not misleading. And as well, from the environmental health side, we can look at our HACCP compliance and make sure that we do what we say we do, and it works. it's been reassuring to have that support, because, like I say, it's a great auditing tool, and it keeps you on your toes and it makes you develop and grow as a business, as well as being fully compliant and legal at the same time.
Thanks, Stuart. Yay, we're back. Thank you, Stuart. I know there's a lot of fiddling around in the background when you're going between screens, but thank you. So we're coming towards the end. It has been, oops, lost the slides. There we go. It's been a real whistle-stop tour, and I appreciate if you're new to PA, it's possibly quite tricky to keep up. But the key messages to take away are that primary authority is a statutory scheme. Partnerships are nominated by the Secretary of State, but they can also end by revocation, and that could be because one or more of the parties don't feel like it's working. It doesn't happen often, but it's there if anyone needs it. Regulation has got to be delivered by local authorities or fire and rescue services, and a primary authority can guide local checks on business compliance. Primary authority can share information and intelligence with other local authorities, and the scheme creates some statutory duties for local authorities and fire and rescue services, including if there's an inspection plan, you've got to follow it. The whole scheme is there and intended to help local regulators to do their job, and we've got guidance and other materials available on the Primary Authority Register, which we will send you with a slide pack. It's really well established in many sectors, and the Primary Authority Register holds all the information that local authorities need. So if you're from a local authority, please do make sure you've got your own login and you know how to use the system. Next slide, please. So when you get the slide deck, you'll have links to all of these different resources. So we've got some video case studies, you can have a look at them. You saw one just now from a business in Manchester talking about their experience of PA. Devon and Somerset Trading Standards have got some written case studies on their website if you want to have a read of those. And the NFCC for fire services have some information and case studies on their website as well. And then there's some other links to our resources here at OPSS. So if you need any help, we have a help desk who are really, really helpful, thankfully. Their phone number and email address is on the screen now. But this is really, I suppose, a very brief snapshot of some of the primary authority training that we can offer you. So we run courses routinely throughout the year. They're all free of charge and all on MS Teams at the moment, all eligible for CPD. But if you're thinking, actually, I think we need something a bit more bespoke in our authority or in our area, please get in touch. We can put together bespoke training packages for you. So we've got a basic course, which is our essential skills. That's for anybody. We've got a course for people who are actively working on primary authority partnerships to make sure they're making an impact. And we've got inspection plan workshops as well for people looking at developing an inspection plan. And then finally, my colleague Caroline is developing and about to launch some business specific training as well. So again, look out for that. That will be in Primary Authority News when it's available, and businesses will be able to book onto those courses. I can see that I've got a question in the chat, which I will have a quick read of now. We have 1 minute to go. So let's see, we had a new officer. I hadn't looked at variant. Okay, so Janet, I can see you've got an officer who didn't follow an inspection plan, and they found some serious issues in that business, and your concern is if they'd followed it, they wouldn't have seen them. What we always say is an inspection plan is there to guide what checks should be carried out. But of course, when you go in to do an inspection, and my background's environmental health as well, is that you don't have blinkers on. If you're looking at something and you notice other areas of non-compliance, then of course the inspection plan would not stop you from going and looking at them. If you've got specific concerns about a PA and their attitude and approach when you engage with them, I think that's something that we pick up with you offline, if that's okay. So I think we'll have your details and we'll be able to just get in touch after these sessions just to get a bit more information from you and see whether there's anything we can do to help. But thank you for flagging that. And yeah, we will get in touch after the session. So we've come to the end. Stuart, you had sorry, Daniel, a quick final poll, if possible. Let's see, before we end.
Oh, sorry, bear with me because I had the other one in there.
That's all right.
All right, just take me a second.
We can hear you typing now, Daniel. So. I should just say, actually, while you're all still here or just about to leave, we've got a live briefing tomorrow, 4 o'clock. If you haven't, I think you should have the link actually in the chat from earlier. Let me see, is it at the top? Yeah, the link is in the top of the chat for this session. It's a live briefing with colleagues from FSA, HSE, DEFRA, and also I'll be speaking very briefly on the Public Health Act coming into scope in PA in England as well. So please do join us for that live briefing if you're available at 4 p.m. tomorrow. Okay, I'll conclude by saying thanks for joining us today. This will be made available to watch via video if you've got colleagues that need a bit of a refresher and missed it, or by all means do get in touch with us to see whether we can get you on one of our more kind of detailed training sessions. But thank you for coming and joining us, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the week's sessions.